Okay, so good morning, everyone. I'm Chris Larson, and as president, it is my honor to call to order the 105th spring meeting of the American Association of Variable Star Observers. Our first order of business will be a report from the Secretary, Gary Walker.
This is a report of the Woburn meeting held November 14th, 2015. General called the meeting to order at 9 a.m. Gary gave the report on the Muncie meeting and council actions. Bill Goff gave the treasurer's report, reported that we had 748K draw at that time, and that the endowment had a current value of about $13 million. Stella gave her second director's report and first annual report. She reported on deceased members and friends: Charles Towns, Jersey Spiel, Leonard Dahlmark, Robert Andrus, Howard Landis, Walter J. Haas, Jeffrey Hopkins, Leroy Snyder, Ray Thompson, Joe Correa, and Kevin Paxson. Membership stood for a moment of silence. Stella mentioned the frequency of downloads, 4 NOVA campaigns, VSX, Spanish and Greek translations of CCD manuals, and also translated the Visual Observing Manual and DSLR manuals. She also mentioned the popularity of the choice courses. Sorry about that. We reported that Joyce Guzik, Aaron Price, Richard Sabo, and Bill Stein were elected to council. We reconvened at 2 p.m. in the afternoon for a scientific paper session, chaired by Katrianne Kohlenberg. Meeting was adjourned at 5 p.m. Any questions on that part? Okay. Thursday, we held a council meeting here at St. Louis. We had the normal business and minutes reports of committees and officers. Primary discussion involved the fact that we had been buoyed by grants for the past 5 or 6 years. That is now ending. The grant climate is somewhat cooled. We're ending the APAS grant shortly. That, combined with a poor stock market climate, cost of living raises over 6 years, has created a situation where we cannot continue to support all the programs that we are currently submitting. Council decided to protect the core activities and try and continue to do those well. This means that some programs will stop, change, or coast. We had a 4-hour item on the agenda to what was in the core. We did not get to that. We did discuss seriously AAVSO net. Consensus was that this was not part of the core, but that it needs to be continued. However, it must continue in a self-funded mode. So there will be a campaign, I'm sure. If you are interested in donating to that, please do. At the same time, there's a strong need to support the annual campaign, which Mike has currently going. It's very important to ongoing programs. Any questions? Okay, I'll introduce Bill Goff, who will give you more details on our treasury situation.
I want to give you a little bit of a picture about where the budget stands and talk about some of the investments that we are involved in, to give you a little bit of idea about where the money situation is. And hopefully I better do it that way. Oh, there we go. Okay, now I got it. So anyway, nonprofits normally talk in terms of receipts and disbursements. For-profit businesses talk in terms of income and expense. So you're going to see a little bit of a different nomenclature here. But anyway, talking about receipts, what money comes in to us. First of all, dues. We are at about $62,000 so far this year, and that's about I'm showing about 85% of what we expected. Most of the dues money has come in because, of course, the dues are due, last fall. So during this fiscal year, most of the dues have been paid. I'd also like to point out that about 10% of that dues money is sustaining members, and I would encourage folks that are in a position to do so to consider a sustaining membership. The difference between the standard dues and the sustaining dues is about $75, and you get a nice letter from Mike saying that this is deductible. So if you itemize your income tax, it is considered a donation. Operations and contributions is right about online. We are expecting this number to go up with the annual campaign, which is just beginning. Temporarily restricted is pretty high right now because we've gotten some very generous donations, some to AAVSO Net and to the Mayall Fund. So this number seems to be a little bit higher than normal, but this is a number we like to see because it really helps our situation a lot. Grants, and as Gary mentioned, grants, we're behind the curve right now. We had a grant that was supposed to bring about $200,000 this year with the APAS, an NSF grant with APAS. And beginning of the year, NSF decided they wanted to reevaluate how the money was being credited, and so there was a big long pause of several months where we had no receipts coming in from the APAS grant. Work slowed down, and so as a result, this number is quite a bit below what we expected for the year. Now the money is still ours; it's still coming. That has not changed, but the invoicing system has changed somewhat. So we're behind the curve on what we expected to get from grants so far, as Gary mentioned. The endowment draw at $312,000 is just exactly right for this time of the year, 6 months along. The council had approved a withdrawal of $624,000 last September for this fiscal year. So that money comes out of our investment profile, and as you can see, it's a big chunk of change, and it's basically what pays the bulk of what our receipts are. So the total receipts so far is about $500,000, a little over $500,000. So we're pretty close to where we should be, although it should be higher because of that grant situation. And because contributions are ahead, it takes some of the sting out of the loss that we've had in the grants side. Talking about disbursements, where's the money going? Staff cost is it's actually low right now, and as many of you know, there are a couple of vacancies, and some of the staffing is being realigned. So we are actually below right now, and fortunately, it's good that we are low because, frankly, with the grant situation what it is, it ends up we're actually pretty good for the year so far. When you balance what we didn't get on grants and what we have not had to pay out in staff positions. Building and utilities is a little bit low, but it's a small number. That's not too meaningful. We put some extra money in building and maintenance because of the snowmageddon of 2 winters ago, and we got concerned that we needed to have more money in maintenance, so we haven't had to need it this year, fortunately. General operations is about right. That's kind of office situations. Technical operations is our internet connection, and there's some telescope rental time that gets involved here. And miscellaneous is, well, let's see. Those things are, I can't describe them offhand. I always have a stumble with this one. So the total disbursements are actually a little bit low, thank goodness, because of the situation with the grant funding. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and talk about the funds and the donations, what money has come into us. It's important that we understand that our organization is largely supported by our membership, and the donations that you make to these funds really help the organization move forward. The original endowment stands at about $3.3 million. This is money that's started out back in the 1950s, and over the years has grown as people have made contributions to it. The caveat that goes with the endowment is that this actually becomes a technical definition under law. This money is restricted. We cannot spend this money even if the entire place burns down. That $3 million is not accessible to us. We can only use income and dividends that are made out of that money. The original corpus of that $3 million is not available to us. Now, you can make donations to this endowment if you care to, and that's fine, as long as you understand that the only thing we can use out of it is interest and dividend. The Ford Fund, and this is not really a fund in the classic sense, but I like to, since I knew Clint well, I like to point out that about $9 million of our monies is money that Ford left to us. And as Gary mentioned a little bit earlier, if you've added these numbers up, this number is down from what it was last fall. Our investment profile took a big hit right at the end of the year and into January. And as I'll show you on a graph in a little bit, our investment profile dropped quite a bit. But anyway, the Ford Fund is about $9 million. The Maddie Fund right now, this is in honor of our former director, Janet Maddie, stands at about $116,000. This is a fund you can donate to. And on our donation pop-up list on the website, you can actually make donations to this fund if you care to. That money is used for students, summer students. Well, okay, Stella might be able to clarify it, I guess, when she gets up here in a minute. The Mayall Fund stands at about $44,000. There was money spent out of that last year, I believe. We had a student working in headquarters for a short time. And I'd like to point out that we're going in a direction of creating named funds. So if you in your situation decide that you would like to make a significant contribution to the AAVSO, I'd like to see that your named fund ends up on our treasurer's list someday. And if you make a contribution that you feel you want the AAVSO to have control of in the form of a fund, there might be some restrictions about how the money is spent. Let us know. We can work that out. So anyway, going to continue with the donations. Annual campaign has just begun, so I don't really have a number for that. The AAVSO net stands at 32K donations this year. We've had a member make a very large donation and then a lot of other smaller donations to keep the AAVSO net moving. The building fund has received about 300. The solar fund about 825. The sponsorship fund, this is money that's used to pay the registration fees of students that might be coming to our meetings. And the Janet Maddie Fellowship, or the Maddie Fellowship, has received an additional 1,000, and the Mayall Fund has again received over 10,000. So that fund has got a nice boost this year. Okay, investments, 12.2. If you might remember, last fall that number was closer to 13 million. It took a huge drop in January. It has recovered somewhat as of the April statements, but there was a stock market. Well, your stocks may have recovered, but well, okay, that's something that we may want to discuss, and I'm going to describe where it is invested. Yeah, right. If you got some ideas, Bernie Madoff is not around, I understand. But anyway, I would like to show you something about where the investments are. And you're right, the stock market, as of now, if you just look at the numbers, is close to what it was 6 months ago. But because we're taking money out for run operations, not all of that recovery is available to us. So let's talk about where some of this money is. First is an organization called TIF, which stands for the Investment Fund for Foundations. We went into TIF about 3 years ago. They only serve other nonprofits. They themselves are a nonprofit organization. They have about $11 billion under investment, and what we end up with is investment in their fund. We only have one set of shares in their fund, their TIF multi-asset fund, as they call it. They have about 20 analysts on staff, and they only buy other funds. They don't buy individual stocks or bonds. They only buy other funds. And right now they are holding about $6 million of our investment profile. Our other main investment house is Greystone. It's a Morgan Stanley company. They also only serve nonprofits, the Greystone portion of Morgan Stanley. They have about $200 billion under investment, and they have about 150 staff. They buy all instruments. My statement from them is 150 pages each month. So they buy a wide variety of stocks and bonds. We have about $6.2 million invested with Greystone. So this is the picture of where our investment value stands. And you can see back in about 2007, 2008, we were approaching about 18 million. And then with the big stock market drop, it dropped quite a bit. And we thought we were going to see a little bit of recovery around 11. But recently, the last couple of years, it has plateaued off again. So the and it essentially looks like a straight line from about 2010 out. As I said, it's important to remember that this does not recover in the same pattern that an investment with the stock market does, because we're pulling out $600,000 each year. So that's money that's not available for growth. It's money there for our operations. The question becomes is, are we drawing out too much? Some people, there's now some discussion going on with council about maybe our withdrawal schedule needs to change in some way so that we can see a little bit more of a growth pattern on this. Fortunately, inflation's been low for the last several years, so that's helping a little bit. But where do we want to be in 5 years? Where do we want to be in 10 years? If inflation returns, this line to tip up a little bit more to keep up with it. So anyway, that's the boring picture of where we stand. Actually, Gary has a graph. He's in charge of the investment committee, and they track along pretty well. Sometimes there's a little pause between them, but if you look at we've been with TIF for about 3 years. We've been with Greystone for about 2, and if you plot them out, they track along pretty well. Yes, Gary.
Yeah, we haven't talked about this in council, but it was an idea I was going to raise this time, but we just didn't have a chance. There probably are members who have significant financial experience who might serve on the investment committee. Getting elected to council and having those desires to work on the investment committee are not necessarily consistent. So if you're interested in working on the investment committee, please speak to Stella, because I think in these times we could probably use some additional expertise.
Yes.
You don't seem to have a director's discretionary fund. You
Actually,
do now.
Okay. Okay. Well, thank you.
Somebody take this.
Actually,
somebody take this before I change my mind.
No. Thank you. No, excellent point. I should say that when Stella came on board, the council did provide a discretionary fund, but because of these crises, thank you, Stella. She's a very I don't want to pick my word carefully here. She's very aware of the situation. She's very careful about how the money is spent. Thank goodness. So she did not spend most of the discretionary fund that was set aside. So, and in fact, with next year's budget, it's a problem too. So thank you. And with that, I'd like to introduce our director, Stella Kafka. I'm sorry. Are there other questions?
On AAVSO, I didn't quite understand. Is AAVSO going to get finished, or
yes,
the money?
AAVSO will be finished.
Spending rate will be lower.
Yeah, no.
Over time.
No, the funding is exactly the same. We started off with in the range of $400,000 over 2 years, but NSF got into a a little bit of a disagreement about how it's being invoiced. You know, what is overhead and what is staff cost.
They always do that.
Yes, I know. And they apparently there were some new people in the office and they were picking through paperwork.
They got to do something.
I don't know what all those details are. But the important answer is that the money is still there and the money will come to us. We expected to spend it all by this summer. It may flow into next year. Some of it may flow into next year. Anyway, and still, I'm sure could talk about this for half an hour.
I'd like to make a comment on that. So pretty much APAS, as Bill mentioned, it's a product of the AAVSO. It's one of the things that we do and we offer to you. It is a product for the community. It is a citizen science project. As Bill said, I can actually have a presentation on APAS, but I'm going to leave it for Arnie for the fall meeting because he started it. He's working on it. It's